Hello, my name is McKenna, and I'm here to talk to you about making the most of the moment and also creating personal momentum. When I think about momentum, I think about two ways in which we can create it, and we look at our everyday lives. The first part of this is a physical definition, in that we have a limited amount of energy that we can use on a daily basis. And the second part I want to talk to you today about is the individual moments that we can take advantage of to form a greater direction in our lives. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a certified drug and alcohol counselor in the state of Illinois. I help people overcome things like anxiety, depression. I help people better manage their emotions, including anger. I help people with strained relationships repair them. And over the 25 years that I've been doing this, I've noticed this, that small changes lead to big change. And if you're able to string along enough of these small changes, you create momentum. Now, momentum is every area of our lives. Watch a sporting event and you'll likely hear the announcers talk about which team has momentum and what they can do about it. I want to talk to you about the physical definition. The equation goes like this. Velocity times mass equals momentum. The more velocity and mass an object in motion has, the greater the momentum that's created. Now, velocity is all about force. And if you can figure out how to apply the force in the right direction, you create momentum. Now that's exactly what I do. I help people figure out how to apply the force in the right direction. Now, keep in mind, everybody has a limited amount of energy. So, you want to make sure that you're pointing in the right direction. If your energy is going in the wrong direction, it's going to be fruitless. And so what I do is I teach people how to point their energy in the right direction by the concept of 3 buckets of awareness. Bucket number 1 is the bucket of control. So everything in your life that you can control would fall in this bucket. Let's talk about something we all do, sleep. So, with the example of sleep, let's say that you have an important interview tomorrow morning, and you want to get a good night's sleep. So what are all the things that are in your control? Well, you can control what time you go to bed. You can control what time you wake up by setting an alarm. Those are all the things that are within your control, even how long you lay in bed. But over here is the bucket of everything outside of your control. So can you control how refreshed you feel in the morning? No. How many hours you actually sleep? No. You might be very anxious about the appointment that's coming up in the morning, and you may wake up in the middle of the night. Or you may have trouble falling asleep. Those are all things outside of your control. When things fall in this bucket, you need to learn to let it go. This bucket's all about trust. Now, bucket number 3 is the bucket of influence. And this is a combination of bucket number 1 and bucket number 2. This one requires wisdom, it requires insight. And so what are things that you can influence about your sleep? Well, the sleep environment. You can look at how dark it is in your room. You can look in terms of how quiet it is. But then there's outside forces. There's things that may wake you up. Noises. Maybe it's a noisy roommate that comes back. Maybe it's a spouse that wakes you up. So these outside forces come into play with relationships. And that's really the difference between this bucket and bucket number 1, control, is in terms of relationships. We can't control somebody else. We can only try to influence them. Now the key is to make sure that you're in the right bucket. Many times when I counsel people, they're in the wrong bucket. But we're all guilty of this. And so, what I also want to talk about is the idea of moments and how to take advantage of those moments that we have. And so, the formula for this I use is connection, reflection, direction. And connection's all about relationships. But relationships really start with yourself, knowing who you are. The more you know about yourself, the better you're going to be in position to form strong, solid relationships. A good friend of mine named Bill Yonker has a great quote on relationships. It goes like this: the best thing in the world is good relationships, and the worst thing in the world is bad relationships. You see, relationships usually fall apart when we stop listening. Many years ago, I read a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Within that, he talks about the concept of 5 levels of listening, and I want to share those with you. Level 1 is ignoring, hearing none of the message. Level 2 is pretend listening, when you may be nodding but you're really not hearing anything. Selective listening is when you're hearing parts of the message, usually the parts that you're interested in. Level 4 is attentive listening. You are paying attention, but your own point of reference. Usually you're trying to think about how you're going to reply or come back to a statement that's been made. While the best level is empathic listening. Listening from the other person's point of view, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, trying to have empathy. And so, with relationships comes time also to reflect where am I at in my life. And so reflection is able to take time to reflect and evaluate where I'm at in any given situation. And so, I learned this lesson from my oldest son. When he was a toddler, when he was 2 years of age, he would say one particular word over and over. You ever hang around a 2-year-old, you know what it is? It's a command. It's no. Now, thankfully, he grew out of it. So when he turned 3 years of age, it became a question. Hang around a 3-year-old, you know what that question is. It's why. Why? We all have that question for us to sort out in any given situation of why am I here? Now, lastly is direction. And looking at the habits that we form. The habits that you do today are going to give you a glimpse into your future. What I want you to do is I want everybody to fold their hands right now. Go ahead, fold your hands with me. All right, now look at your hands, and you'll notice we all fold our hands a certain way. Which thumb's on top? What I want you to do is I want you to reverse that. I want you to take your fingers up a slot and put the opposite thumb on top. Now tell me, how does that feel? Strange, awkward, weird. When you change habits, that's what it is. It's going to feel awkward or weird, uncomfortable. You do this over and over, though, what happens? It becomes the norm, right? And so sometimes we're unwilling to sit with uncomfortable feelings when we need to. There's really 3 main reasons why habits form or what motivates behaviors. It really comes down to really these 3 things. First one is, it feels good. Second is, it avoids pain. Or thirdly, there's some perceived benefit. And so when we look to direction, where we're going, you have to look at what habits you're doing right now. So in summary, you need to make sure you put your experiences in the right bucket. You need to make sure that you take time to connect with relationships. Take time to reflect, is this where I want to be and where do I want to go? And look at those habits that you're doing right now and see which way they're pointing to your future. Thank you.